They form the backbone of Stalin's security state, and their duties are manifold. They are the firemen, policemen, clerks, border guards, judges, executioners, prison camp guards, security forces, spies, soldiers, and murderers in service of the Soviet Union's Ministry of the Interior, also known as the NKVD. I'm Spartacus Olsson. This is a World War II in real-time special episode about the rise of the NKVD. Or to be precise, about the People's Commissariat for Internal Affairs, which is the Ministry of the Interior in the Soviet Union. The NKVD is founded just after the October Revolution in 1917. It is really just your average Ministry of Internal Affairs, overseeing stuff like local government, infrastructure, border safety, firefighting, and domestic peacekeeping. In the 1920s, the power of the NKVD is still somewhat limited as the Soviet secret police and intelligence services, first the Cheka and later the Joint State Political Directorate, OGPU, falls under the direct control of the highest body of the Soviet Union, the Council of People's Commissars, with Joseph Stalin at its head. The NKVD is about to become a whole lot more powerful, though, when Henryk Jagoda rises to control the umbrella of organizations. He comes from the OGPU Secret Service, where he has long been the de facto head of the organization and formally the leader of the OGPU after the former leader, Vyacheslav Michinski, dies under mysterious circumstances. On July 10, 1934, Jagoda is appointed as the new People's Commissar for Internal Affairs, controlling the NKVD, which then also includes the OGPU, which is rebranded the Main Directorate of State Security, or GUGB, later the NKGB. Under Jagoda, the NKVD becomes an all-powerful security apparatus overseeing state security, internal security, and controlling the militias, police, secret police, intelligence service, prisons, and Gulag forced labor camps. The NKVD falls directly under the Council of People's Commissars and the Politburo of the Communist Party, which by now, in effect, means Joseph Stalin. Still, each of the NKVD's own departments, the Glavki, like the Gulag system, has some level of autonomy. In that regard, the NKVD Gulag administration grows into its own little empire, which I'll cover separately in a later video. Stalin now more or less turns the NKVD into his personal hit squad as Jagoda proceeds with Stalin's personally ordered ethnic, economic, and political cleansing campaigns. The OGPU has already been killing thousands of kulaks, land-owning peasants, since the 1920s, but these efforts continue at a rapid pace with Jagoda at the top. Practically anyone who doesn't fit in the perfect picture of the contributing worker or peasant is pushed into the margins of society. Those who don't serve a clear purpose are discriminated against and ultimately persecuted. In 1935 and 1936, 800,000 undesirables are deported to remote areas or are put in Gulag camps. These include kulaks, prostitutes, homeless people, or anyone who is deemed dangerous to state security. But in 1936, Stalin sours on Jagoda for not being ruthless enough, and he is replaced by Nikolai Yezhov. In 1934, he oversaw the ruthless fake prosecution of Stalin's political opponents, among others Lev Kamenev and Grigory Zinoviev, for the murder of the Bolshevik chief of Leningrad, Sergei Kirov. And as chairman of the Central Commission for Party Control, Yezhov has greatly impressed Stalin with his ruthless methods. When he takes over the NKVD, he immediately starts rounding up perceived enemies of the state at a staggering pace. In July 1937, he launches the Great Terror, cracking down on former kulaks and ethnic groups that he views as a threat to the Soviet Union. In multiple separate actions in 1937 and 1938, 1,150,000 people are tried by troikas, or three-headed NKVD tribunals, with the power to imprison or execute anyone, often without a shred of real evidence. As judge, jury, and executioner, in only 2 years, 683,000, close to 1,000 people per day, will be executed. Hundreds of thousands of more disappear in Siberian labor camps where a great many more will die. This includes, for example, the Polish operation, in which 140,000 ethnic Poles are arrested as foreign spies, of which over 110,000 are executed. The Great Terror coincides with purges within the Red Army and government bodies, where thousands of officers are demoted, fired, imprisoned, or executed. Between 1936 and 1938, 3 major Moscow trials convict a large number of high-ranking Soviets, including General Mikhail Tukhachevsky and, yes, Yezhov's former boss, Yendrik Yagoda. Others are executed by the NKVD's Special Operations Department, both in the Soviet Union and abroad, like Leon Trotsky, who was killed in Mexico City in 1940. All in all, many thousands of enemies are caught up in the terror, whether because of their ethnicities like the Poles, Ukrainians, Tatars, or Kazakhs, the number of which would be killed is, by the way, often determined in bureaucratic quotas, that is to say, orders to kill a percentage of them no matter what, or whether they are national enemies such as Americans or Germans, class enemies and political enemies such as kulaks, anarchists, or Trotskyists, or just anyone who is seen as an internal or personal opponent of Stalin or Yezhov, including 7 of the original People's Commissars. We have covered all of this in our Between Two Wars episode on the Great Terror and military purges. The link is in the description. But as soon as Yezhov has fulfilled his purpose of purging the Soviet government and army of Stalin's enemies, he quickly falls out of grace. As World War II breaks out, the role of the NKVD will broaden even more. And in 1939, NKVD Deputy Lavrenti Beria replaces Yezhov, who is executed in February 1940. Under Beria, the NKVD enters a phase of reconciliation, blaming Yezhov for excessive killings and incarcerations. But elsewhere, Beria is unapologetic in continuing the NKVD's harsh policies. Under the USSR and German alliance in 1940, the Gestapo and the NKVD coordinate their policies in Poland. German communists are handed over to the Nazis, and the Gestapo gives up known Soviet dissidents. Together, they crack down on Polish intelligentsia and resistance. On both sides of the Molotov-Ribbentrop line, the Gestapo and the NKVD arrest and murder Polish citizens and military officers. The 21 months that the Soviets occupied Poland in 1939 and 1940, 109,400 Polish citizens are arrested. Most are sentenced to the gulags, but more than 8,500 are executed. In total, the number of deported is more than double of that arrested, as whole families of dangerous Poles are forced into the gulag settlements. Polish POWs face a worse fate. Living in 3 camps, they endure a rough winter in 1940, only to have Beria tell Stalin that the prisoners are just waiting to be released in order to enter actively into the battle against Soviet power and to apply to them the supreme punishment, shooting. The NKVD takes roughly 15,000 Polish POW officers to several sites, including one located in the Katyn forest, and shoot them in March and April 1940. In total, between 22 and 28,000 Poles, including the POWs, but also doctors, journalists, politicians, and other intellectuals, are shot in this lesser terror, which I have covered in more detail in episode 1 of War Against Humanity. And then, war between Germany and the Soviet Union breaks out. As the Germans move into former Soviet territory, they uncover dozens of mass burial sites from the Great Terror and Lesser Terror. The Soviets continue their killing on their way out. We have covered the large-scale deportations and prison massacres that the NKVD carry out as they retreat from their territories in the Baltic states, Belarus, and Ukraine in our War Against Humanity series. We also covered how the NKVD engages in sabotage operations like the one in Kiev in September 1941 by booby-trapping German staff buildings, killing dozens of soldiers, officers, and clerks, which the Germans use as an excuse to execute masses of Jewish men, women, and children in, among other places, the Babi Yar ravine. Anyway, as the war continues, the NKVD cashes in on an extensive spy network that they have been building up over the years. Their connections include Rekad Sorge, who Indy has covered in a bio episode, and a web of German resistance networks that the Gestapo calls the Rote Kapelle, as well as many other German spies, such as Gestapo member and NKVD spy Willy Lehmann. These efforts also include counterintelligence in the Red Army called SMERSH, which deals with foreign spies, Soviet collaborators, anti-Soviet resistance, and deserters. Their officers are deployed throughout the entire Red Army, recruiting or coercing many of hundreds of thousands of informants within the army ranks. To add to that control over the army, the NKVD also fields its own semi-military units, much like the Waffen-SS in Germany, though in the NKVD's case, they are exclusively rifle divisions. These internal troops have the same legal status as the Red Army, and many tens of divisions will be operational by the end of the war. They mainly operate in rare areas or carry out NKVD's border patrol duties. They also act as strategic security forces, conducting foreign espionage and counter-espionage in civil and military communities. But the NKVD's troops also add to the military weight of the Red Army, fighting alongside them in places like Stalingrad. Here, another one of their responsibilities is to preserve the Red Army's morale and to help carry out Stalin's anti-desertion decrees, Order number 270 and Order number 227. The first one declaring those who surrender to the Axis powers enemies of the state, often with execution by the Army or NKVD as a fatal consequence. The latter order is issued in July 1942 and puts those who don't conform to the Red Army's ideology in penal battalions, which were sent out to the most dangerous areas of the front. The NKVD's tentacles slide into pretty much all facets of Soviet bureaucracy. It is entangled in state and internal affairs. It functions as a semi-military organization alongside and separate from the Red Army and Navy. It is deeply rooted in Soviet politics and ideology, being both a result of and a tool for Stalin's rise to ultimate power. Ultimately, the goals have less to do with the state's safety and more with Stalin's personal ideology, worries, and goals. It speaks volumes that each new chapter of Stalin's journey to assume total power over the Soviet Union coincides with that he has the head of the NKVD replaced and killed by yet another murderous bureaucrat. If you want to see any of our videos explaining the military purges, the Great Terror, the Katyn Massacre, or the Great Prison Massacres, you can find the links in the description. You can click right here to see our bio episode on Soviet spy Rekad Sorge. Join the Time Ghost Army at timeghost.tv or patreon.com. Subscribe, ring that bell, and never forget.